And back in 90 after the countdown. Man, make sure the mic unmutes. How does that sound? And we had another show in front of here a moment or two ago, and you just have to get all the settings just sort of right. No, they don't have to be exactly right, but close enough is good. I keep hearing that 70% is the new finished, but that would have just gotten me a C, and maybe that would have even been a C minus. But it would have passed. What do they call the doctor who graduates last in his class? Doctor. All right. Let's look at a little bit of weather action. Severe weather Europe. Let's just start over there and then kind of work our way this direction. Yeah, doctor. Deep cyclone will push severe winds into Ireland and Scotland on Saturday. And that's just kind of deep trough of low pressure. That stuff is still happening. Like we've had them here in the States and South Africa. But Europe is not immune. And the other couple of days, we saw the record heat happening up in Scandinavia. And there's always a reason. There's always a reason. There is something that is out of, let's just say you're on the warm side of the storm. The storm always comes. If you're 30 degrees above normal, you're probably guaranteed to at least be 15 below normal once that event has passed. You're on the other side of the wave train. Not the gravy train, but the wave train. The ridge out ahead is warm, and then the trough has got to be equally as deep to have amplified the ridge that you're now in place. So that's kind of what's happening there. So, and of course, since I've been on this in a bit, what we're looking at, this was kind of curious today. What I saw, Mars, that is not a little bit out of the realm of what we typically do, but we've got robots on there. We've got rovers that have been there coming up on 15 years. I think Discovery, and my goodness, it's been a long time since I've thought of those names and even looked at the imagery that is often shared with us. But a nice daytime high, about 22 below 0 Celsius, with a nighttime low probably close to 100 below Celsius. So that means a range of maybe 0 Fahrenheit to about 110 below 0. That is not something that a foil or aluminum blanket is going to help you with. That's just plain cold. We looked at this a couple of days ago, where there are so many of these solar panels across the desert Southwest. And if I zoom, does that stop the animation? Sometimes it does that with GIFs. But anyway, we can see the reflections as the sun passes overhead. Now, remember, we've got solstice coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow, I believe the 18th or 19th, because we had a leap year, it kind of moves it back closer to the 20th than, say, the 21st or the 22nd. And so the sun is essentially as overhead for the northern hemisphere as it'll get, whereas farther south, it's the winter solstice. That's just kind of how it is. And so let's just do this. Let's go to the Weather Prediction Center. Temperatures at 4 p.m. Eastern times, 2 o'clock Mountain, 1 o'clock into the West. And they're curious. This is what we've been seeing, an unusual pattern for June with 90s in New England. And we'll take a closer look at just how deep into the 90s and parts of the St. Lawrence River Valley approaching 100 Fahrenheit, or the better part of what would that be, about 38, 37 and a half Celsius. And then the only really otherwise big heat arcing from the southwest across and all the way up to the upper part of, say, the Great Lakes states, where the water is still plenty cold and the 50s and 60s rule through the Mountain West. And then the other story, which just keeps going on. Thanks, Kathleen. That was 15 years ago. 15 years ago since I was on the air at KPVI in Pocatello. It's really hard to believe. Yeah, and it is true. It's good. It's good to be able to speak and talk about things that I was asked not to. And it was really tough to do a job when there's an element of meteorology, when there's an element of weather and climate that is happening, you see it happening, and are unable to address because it affects your forecast. And because it affects your ability to forecast, it's your reputation that you're not able to defend. And I really struggled with that when I was just kind of figuring out what was going on with the climate, with weather, and where everything, let's just say, where the chips would eventually ended up landing. And they haven't landed yet. There's a lot of things in the air. There's a lot of, I'd almost like to call the whole global warming thing the biggest false flag perpetrated against mankind. It's that big an event. It's that important to humanity because it is impacting so many agendas, so many parts, from energy, from kids not going to school. It's huge. It's huge, and it is not given the proper airing or even debate, because there's one side of this debate, of this topic, that won't even talk to the other. It's that shut down. The discussion is that controlled. There was a tweet I saw the other day, and I kind of scrolled by it earlier because I didn't want to go there, but here we are. That if 97% of climate scientists agreed on this is the outcome, then why do we need them at this point? Let's just let them go. The job's done. Get out of here. Quit feeding off the government trough of money and returning papers which support the predetermined narrative. These are just some of the temperatures. Yeah, and here we are in the warm. It is only this warm in the St. Lawrence River Valley, Maine, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and so forth, because basically it's just so cold elsewhere, just to the west and into the Rockies. The things that end up showing up. How does that even happen? Come on. Twitter's a problem. I'm telling you. So let's get back here. There we go. Bosomed ladies. All right, there's that dust thing going on. Yeah, there's that dust rolling in, and we're gonna have some incredible sunsets through the Caribbean, through the Gulf of Mexico, as that dust, that sand continues to pour off. And in the meanwhile, as long as this happens, then we're really not going to be too concerned about hurricanes, because they just will not be able to get themselves together. You get another look at that truck in front of that car that we looked at when the storm chasers take their little ones out on the road. And man, can you imagine how beat up hail gets on these cars as these guys take these into these storms? And if you're going to be in the storm, West Texas is a place to be. And it's kind of crazy down there. This one in Conway, North Carolina, where you can see the tornado just slowly coming together just in the distance. And this is a very dangerous place to go storm chasing. Look at how hemmed in you are. You can't see what's coming into the west or onto the left side of the vehicle, depending on what direction it's pointing. It's dangerous. And so once you get east of Kansas City, certainly St. Louis, but Kansas City, east of about Tulsa, the storms tend to happen there later in the night anyway, but it becomes a dangerous event to go chasing. You got the dust up to the north and then thunderstorms to the south, and the thunderstorms are only going to happen where that water remains. This was an amazing photograph taken from one of the weather guys in Lubbock, Texas last night. A lightning, literally, wow, just kind of wow. Usually you don't get to see the branches, the roots, if you will. The branches of the roots, they both have the same effect. just depending on the flow of the current from the trees. Usually it's the other way around, but that is just a wow. Yeah, crazy things continuing to happen. All right, let's get on to temps. As we see the morning lows still in the chilly, where we had the snow yesterday across the northern Rockies, with morning lows in the 70s in the Great Lakes states. Oops, terribly warm. There's a boom at the end of this mic, and even still some 90s sitting in there. All right, let's move on with that deep low still kind of, yeah, it did look like a tree, didn't it, Tracy? That's kind of crazy. The deep low rotating, and then the cool air into the Midwest, and then crazy thunderstorms mixed with fire. And this is kind of the big one of it all. I wanted to see these clouds, boom, coming in underneath this curl from this morning, and I may end up stopping the animation just to look at how they kind of raced in right in through here underneath, and then undulating. They're just, it's fascinating to see how the different layers of the atmosphere all work together. And sometimes they work against each other. Yes, Tracy, that was Donald's drink of water. I got him earlier, and now it's on the floor, and my socks are getting wet. Things happen. Let's animate that baby. Throw the reins off to the east, Minnesota. And these are places that aren't necessarily dry. Maybe into Northern Kansas, they can kind of use that water. It's dry there. The Front Range of Colorado absolutely can use the water. But most of where the rain has been falling lately is just on locations that are, not in dire need. They're doing okay as it is. So we're just looking at kind of more of the same for the time being, with the cool in the southeast and then the unsettled weather to the west. And then maybe we'll get some summer heat into the Rockies. Don't know. It'll happen for a minute, but it won't last. But I think we've just begun to see this change, where what was old weather patterns that we would experience 10, 15 years ago, or even 20 and 30 years ago, is just not happening now. We're seeing these big cutoff lows like this one back here in Europe. These things are too big for this late in the year. And that's just kind of the trend that appears to be happening at this point in the time. But yeah, Robin, that was the coolest lightning ever. And we're going to do a little bit of change on this show. Yeah, I know what that laugh is for up there. I know what that laugh is for. We're going to move this show off my page and into exclusively the Success Secrets for Business, Family, and Life page. We will use excerpts just to kind of get you over there. So join the group. It's an easy process. And then you can continue to keep up with me and send stories and so forth. And we'll look forward to seeing you over there. And kind of the other name for it is Metadime, because that's the larger umbrella name of the group, of the company, a company to be, as it all kind of congeals and becomes what's going to be a really, really cool project. All right, everybody, have a great night, and we'll catch you tomorrow, probably a little bit closer to our regular time, or maybe not. Who's to say? Might even be a little bit earlier, but ultimately, I think we're going to move the time to 5 Mountain, so it's just a little bit earlier and closer to that 5 o'clock news. All right, everybody, have a great evening. Talk to you later.